It's time for today's Lucky Land horoscope with Victoria Cash.
Life's gotten mundane, so shake up the daily routine and be adventurous with a trip to Lucky Land. You know what they say, your chance to win starts with a spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com to play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
It needs to be on huge networks. People need to know the sport because we love the values, we love the camaraderie, we love everything it brings in the game. It mimics our society as well. You know, it's all about the team. And yes, you've got individual stars, but rugby, as you know, is a team sport. It's so exciting. It's global. It's international.
Welcome to U.S. Rugby Happy Hour Live. Interviews with the biggest names in American rugby.
The New England Free Jacks, Major League Rugby champions. One-on-one to score.
Here are your hosts, Bill Baker and that other guy.
Hello and welcome to U.S. Rugby Happy Hour Live. I am stretching right now because I'm exhausted from about 8 hours of Rugby Sevens on my computer while I was working today. And I don't know, Fitzy, you okay? Did you watch some? Get some good matches in?
I didn't do any work today. I
Exactly. It's like March Madness, you know, no one works during that time. So this is Olympics. I get excited about Olympics. I love the Olympics. I've been to a number of the games, worked a couple over the years. I think they're fantastic. Have you ever been to some games?
Not yet, but I plan to. LA coming up. I've got my eye on that one.
Yeah, that's a little easier for us to get to, right? Paris a little harder. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, unfortunately, I believe I heard about why they're starting rugby early in soccer prior to the opening games, which seems a little odd to me. It seems a little off. Hopefully the players get the same thing out of the opening games because that's so exciting, you know, get everyone out there.
You could be in the Rugby Sevens competition and lose in your pool play.
Yeah, before it's
opening ceremony in his car. You can be waving a flag like, well, I'm already leaving tomorrow. So.
Oh, it's too bad for Uruguay. I mean, I hope so. I mean, hold on. I don't mean hope for them. I mean, hope you know what I'm saying. I hope.
Crush Uruguay. Crush them. Crush them.
Another thing before we get to our guest, Fitzy, we never put a bet down for the Free Jacks Old Glory game.
That's why Old Glory didn't win, is because I didn't have a bet on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I know. That was a great match, though. I mean, it really was a good match. And I texted you during the match because from my angle of the stands, there was something clearly offsides in my mind. But I'm, one of the other 3,000 referees in the crowd, so what do I know? But it was a fantastic match. I talked to a few of the guys after the game, Jama, a few of the other guys, and, they're obviously disappointed, but they were just like soaking wet. They worked so hard for that match, and you could just tell the disappointment in their eyes. But they also said, hey, we're here next year, build and get further this time. Yep. So we're going to get there, and we're going to talk more about that with our guests here in a few minutes, actually later in the show. But first, we're going to talk about something else a little sooner than that. But just real quick, listeners tuning in live, or if you listen to the podcast, please give us a follow on the podcast, or on YouTube, or on Facebook, or LinkedIn, or even TikTok. Follow, and subscribe to this show, to U.S. Rugby Happy Hour Live. And also follow us on social media at Eagles Overseas and at Rugby Morning. It does the world good and makes me and Fitzy feel better when we get likes and follows. Yes, I feel good about myself when that happens. All right, with that said, let's go to our guest tonight. We have a big one this time. He's been on the show before. I think this is the first time he's been on via visuals. I think before it's been mostly, I could be wrong.
I think you're right.
But I think it's always been sound with him. But he is a guy you hear. I mean, obviously we see him also doing announcing and sideline reporting, that kind of thing. But you totally hear his voice more and more. So let's get to him. He's a man who is also very sad not to have his picture taken with Snoop Dogg. Let's welcome Dallen Stanford. How are you, Dallen?
Great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. I thought I'd dress in a colorful tsunami out for you all,
Nice. I got my USA. This is a Perry Baker shirt, so I got that going. Fitzy's wearing his fatigues, I think. I don't know.
Camouflage really well.
Yes. But, I was blown away by the Snoop Dogg photos. I don't know if you can see this there, Dallen. So some of the women's sevens teams with Snoop Dogg, some of the men out there with him. But our crack team of graphics guys did find a photo of you with Snoop Dogg. It's not perfect, but that's totally you.
That's brilliant. That's well done. Well done.
Yes.
Whose body is that? Is that Alona Ma's body?
It is hers, yes.
I'll take it. Bill, I'll tell you a quick story about Alona Ma. So I was out doing sideline MLR at the San Diego game, and she was there watching. And afterwards, we're all done. We're walking, back to the parking lot. And, she says to me, "Do you want me to walk you to your car?" And I said, "Yes, thank you very much. It'd be a lot safer that way." So, no one bothered me on the way back.
Yes, I would take that walk myself too. Before we get into what's happened today, Dallen, obviously you've been watching rugby all day, but just for our listeners, our live listeners right now, if you want to leave a comment or question for Dallen, myself, or Fitzy, you can do so on the Facebook and YouTube feeds. Please do so. We love it. I know that a few people tuning in or coming in soon that are really looking forward to this interview or conversation, in the podcast later. So, Dallen, let's do it. It's been a long day. Men's opening round or opening day of rugby in the Olympics in Paris. I didn't watch the earlier matches before USA France, but tuning into that match prior to kickoff, 69,000 fans, give or take, at that point in Stade de France. I mean, how exciting is that for you? And you've been around games like this. That's a lot of fans.
That is. So actually, my most favorite moment commentating is actually that stadium. Rugby World Cup last year, got a chance to commentate South Africa against Ireland, that big pool game in which Ireland won. It was the dream come true to be at that game, but even to be a part of it in a commentary booth.
Yeah.
Packed house. It's so loud. It's unbelievable. The fact that the USA had to play France, and we're going to get to it now, first up, is ridiculous because you saw the flags waving. It's worth about 10 points, that home ground advantage. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, when the draw came out and we saw that U.S. was grouped up with France, and of course, everyone's following the excitement of, Antoine Dupont, who's playing out of his mind right now, right? 15s or 7s. Everything leading up to that first match, just the atmosphere had everyone in that stadium just rallying around the French team, the pressure on the USA men's 7s to get a result in that. And now we'll get into like the outcome and the strategy behind, going for the draw. But I mean, put yourself in their shoes for a second. When you hear that crowd, typically, so long question, but I'm getting to it. You watch some of those HSBC 7 series, right? And the first couple of games in pool play, the stadium's, it's early in the morning. The stadium's kind of filling in. You can kind of ease your way into the tournament. You couldn't in this one, right? It was USA had to get some type of result. They had to get points here. What if you're the coach, if you're Mike Friday, what are you telling the guys? Dallen, you've been in that situation before, playing at eye level. What do you tell the players that have been in that stadium?
Well, so firstly, let's just go through the format, right? So the format's vitally important. This year, the series went down to 12 teams, which I'm not a fan of personally because I like more countries to have the chance to play on this international stage. It also grows the game, right? The fact that you don't have a Kenya or a Canada on the series hurts those countries not playing on the series. So the fact that it's 12 teams means it's more intense, obviously, particularly in the men's series where you've got 6 or 8 teams that could win the tournament at any tournament, which is pretty mental. So from that point, the 12 sides, every single game is like a knockout game in many ways. You can afford to drop one game and get through. If you are able to tie a game, which you can never plan for that, right? It just happens. And that's why the USA kicked the ball out in that game. You have a super high percentage of being the 2 best third-place sides to go through out of the 12 sides. So, you're going to have 2 from each pool and then those 2 slots. So the fact that the US were drawn with Fiji, who are 2-time gold medalists and who on the day, when they play well, will be unstoppable. And then France, who have been brilliant with Dupont. They hadn't won since 2005. He joins the team and they won 2 tournaments. So, what is Mike Friday saying? He's saying, go out and do what you practice. Don't worry about the opposition. But I will say the US were outplayed at ruck time and they lost a lot of possession that way. And on attack, unfortunately, didn't look very cohesive, didn't look in their full stride. So the fact that they got away with a 12-all tie was basically a win in my book. Oren Bitzer, big shout out to you, my friend, for a try-setting tackle over the line that would have been the winning for France. So all in all, I think Mike Friday will take that and say, okay, that's great. We'll move on and we'll talk a bit more about the next one then, of course.
So, Dallen, just real quickly on when they kicked out there to tie, where they were on the field, they were back in their zone on the other side of maybe midfield. If they were closer to the goal line on France, do you think it would have been a different decision there? You think they would have tried to
Fitzy, great point. So people don't give, this strategy enough credit. So you're right. I would say if they were much closer, from the 22 or closer, attacking, they would have had a go and had a chance. But the way that game was going, they weren't able to keep possession for long periods of time. And what probably would have happened is they may have taken the ball wide, been isolated, turnover, France get the ball, and they're going to run, and they'll score and win it. So now all of a sudden, you're looking at not making the quarterfinals because of that one decision. So you're right. As an average fan watching, you would think, hey, keep playing. You've got possession, play, see what happens. But obviously, as Mike Friday is a huge on strategy. And of course, they knew that they would take a win or they would take a tie. And so that you're right. They were too far out to attack. Like the space Perry Baker was offered was not a lot. He got through and scored a great try. But normally he has a lot of room to move and a lot of freedom to express himself. France did a good job to shut him down.
And looking at early in the second half, quite after, soon after France scored, to go to 12-7 lead, we had a breakdown that resulted in a try by Tubola and making it 12-12. 4 players in the tackle, forcing a turnover in the breakdown. I mean, how often do you see half or more than half of your side in a breakdown like that? I mean, how risky is that?
Yeah, Bill. So you bring up a good point. So this is a strategy Argentina have used successfully in the last 2 seasons or so to attack the breakdown. Because if you watch a lot of traditional sevens, there is a one rucker, there's a ball carrier gets tackled, one rucker, and then a scum off or person closest comes to get the ball. So you've got 3 people in a breakdown, of which only one really is protecting the ball. So Argentina realized that they would send in 2 to 3 players, knowing that they were going to get the ball back invariably or spill possession for the opposition, make it untidy. If they did it, then they need to get back and realign and get back in cover. Now, more likely than not, they're going to get the ball back. And France did that successfully, and then the USA did on that occasion. So it's not a strategy you want to adopt all the time. Sometimes you want to fan out and defend. But when the time is right to strike, when you know that their scum off is late in arriving, that's when you attack the breakdown. You may be able to get the ball back. So they've done well. They've done their homework, and it's been very effective for France and Argentina.
And let's speak about one specific player for now. Lucas Lecamp had a phenomenal match against France. Had a decent time against Fiji also, but that France match, a great early try-saving tackle, just covering a lot of territory to get that tackle. And then soon after scoring his own try. Talk about the impact of a guy like Lucas in this tournament.
Yeah, Lucas is just a wonderful prospect, and I'm so happy to see him shine on this big stage. I was watching this with my wife, the game, and she's like, "Who's that young kid?" I was like, "He's from UCLA. He's come to the college system. His father played for Hong Kong at the national side in sevens, so he's always been going to that event. Wonderful kid. He's got just a great work rate. He obviously is lightning, and so he never gives up. A play like that is guaranteed to do most things well, and you want to give a young kid like that freedom to say, have a go. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. And he's stepping up big time, and he has, right? When he debuted, you almost feel like these young kids, when they come through, they're gonna be too starstruck, right? In that there's a Jerry Tuai in the field or whoever it is, and they're playing in front of 70,000, but not a guy like Lucas Lecamp. So I'm a big believer in getting younger players into the system earlier so they can feel that pressure. And those that excel, these are ones to keep for the future. And he's one of those bright spots.
You talk about bright spots, you talk about big moments in the game. I thought the U.S., they did a good job of containing Antoine Dupont. He did have that nifty little behind the back offload, and certainly he made his presence felt out there, but it didn't seem like the men's sevens they didn't shy from knowing that they were going up against Dupont. And I know we're putting a lot of, emphasis on Dupont. I mean, France has got a number of players. Seppo, phenomenal athlete. You mentioned France, they can score and they score quickly. I thought another player who had a phenomenal game, you talk about, big try-saving tackles, Orn Bizer, another young kid who had a phenomenal game. I mean, what does that say about this squad where you've got some veteran leadership? This is probably their last, they're cycling off here. You got some of these younger guys coming up. What does it say about maybe the strength of this program that you can pull these younger guys up and they can step up to the world stage, something like that?
Yeah, it's really, I've been a big fan of Mike Friday since he took over the US program. Back when I was playing, we would beat a team or two here or there, but we would most likely be playing in the bottom half of the competition, every now and again make a quarterfinal. But since Mike has been there, the program has, been quarterfinalists or better, which is great. But getting young players in, I think, are vital, and I think that's something that A year and a half ago, the US lost a few veteran players. Even when Madison Hughes stepped aside, there weren't a lot of great players coming through to fill that gap. And so, funding is an issue because it's not like we can have a second team travel too many times and play these other tournaments. But the fact that you've got Oren Bitzer coming in, and he also played Rugby Town Sevens. They won the Rugby Town Sevens USA under 23s. He was a big part of that. There were a handful of other players, Noah Brown and a few other players you see in MLR did really well in events like that. So we need a second layer of USA players, young players like that can play in a handful of tournaments around the world. Because otherwise, think about it. A coach has a hard job because you need to win. These stops are so important. 12 teams, you need to win. And then you also want to blood new players coming through. So having that balance is kind of hard. And right now, I think we found a balance with quite a few of those players. Because you're right. Perry Baker's gone, Leuta, a bunch of players are going to retire for this Olympic Games. And then do we have enough depth then to fill, think about that, Lucas LeCamp then will be a senior in the team. He's only played for a couple of years, So you're right. Good point about the younger players coming in.
So let's jump forward to the second half of the day for USA. Night and day match. As bad, in my opinion, as bad as a match as it could have gone for USA. A nice start, obviously. Bizzer getting that try early. But then after that, it was just not a good day, not a good match for USA. What went wrong in that match? Was just a matter of hitting that Fijian wall, that gold medal Fijian side?
Yes.
Yeah, so look, Fiji are honestly one of the hardest teams you've ever played against. When you play against New Zealand, who are so tough, it's going to be physical. You're going to get hit. You know what to expect. Fiji, hard to plan for. It's very difficult. When they get in their flow, their rhythm, and as we know, that's why we love watching Fiji play. They're so exciting. They really do keep the ball alive, and the runners with the late switches and the angles they do. If you concede a few early tries and then you lose a few of your own momentum carries, and all of a sudden you're down 21-0, good luck to you, right? Because Fiji is a team that will just then turn it up another notch, which they did against the USA. So honestly, we'll just wipe that game from the memory and go to the next game, very important game, because let's be fair, Fiji are world class when they're on fire. And again, this season they proved they weren't on fire all the time. They never won a series stop, which is unheard of for Fiji rugby. So this is what they did at the World Cup Sevens. They came up and they won the tournament. They stormed everybody, and I feel like they're a team now, judging by that performance and the one earlier today, that they are obviously going to be very tough to beat the knockout rounds.
I felt, Dallen, some of the players, like I mentioned, Lucas a second ago, I felt maybe they were overwhelmed in that match against Fiji because it was maybe one particular play where Lucas covered the player on the outside who was already covered, which resulted in the pass back inside, and no one was covering that player. Could that be the case? I mean, could it have been like, look, this team is just moving too much. We're just a little overwhelmed, and we can't catch up?
Well, what's tricky about that is you play against, most of these players play against each other all the time, so they're quite familiar entities. I think the occasion itself, potentially, because, as you said, being the Olympics again, and when you are a little bit behind on the scoreboard or things aren't going your way, you try to do a bit extra, and that's when things kind of fall apart sometimes. You didn't hear somebody saying, I've got this player, so you double mark somebody, there's a ball back on the inside. So that's what I mean when things start going wrong and they start exploding. You're right. It's hard to claw your way back into it, particularly if you don't get a bit of bounce on your side as well. USA got no favors in that game, and so you're right. It was pretty tough. Now, if you're a Fiji fan, of course, welcome back, right? Because they haven't had a great series on the past stops this year. And of course, there's so many brilliant Fijian fans around the world. I'm happy for them and their country as they go through. But again, as we said, USA have another brilliant opportunity against Uruguay coming up.
Yeah, we're gonna get to what tomorrow looks like in just a second here. One final question here on Fiji, and as I was watching it, and there's no such thing as a quick fix, but it seemed like the restarts were an issue for the U.S. both in defense and just when we were kicking off, right? And that to me seemed like an area of strength for us in the past, where we've been able to, it's almost like a jump ball in basketball, and our guys would be able to just out jump everyone and tip the ball back, or at least on defense, be able to cover when they are able to get the ball. And it seemed like there was some breakdown there. I'm sure, Mike Friday is going to hone in on that, and something it'll have to be tightened up against Uruguay, right? And just moving forward, hopefully into the quarterfinals. But I guess, Dallen, from your point of view, like, what kind of tweaks can one make in less than, say, 24 hours? Knowing you got a big match coming up, like,
Yeah, there are tweaks, absolutely. So after you're done, you have your ice bath, you have your recovery, you kind of switch off from the game for a second, and then later that evening you're going to do your film review. So you're going to watch your portions again. Mike Frida's going to be like, okay, do you see the setup? Let's be fair. Fiji, when they kick off and they jump up, they can get anybody in the air almost. Maybe they can get high, and then they bat it back. So that's hard to kind of navigate. But generally, when you're playing a more predictive team, you're right. They'll look at the angles and say, hey, listen, we missed our mark here. We either overran or didn't have the right angle. Maybe the kick wasn't great. All those things need to be considered. And yes, this is why sevens are so fascinating. Tomorrow, the USA could come back, and let's say they had to play Fiji again. They could beat them. So that's the great thing, where most people are like, oh, no, there's no ways in a 15-a-side game you can concede 45 points and then come back and beat a team the next day, right? So in sevens, you can. There are definite fixes. Also, sometimes the communication might not have been there from some of the players that, might have been an off step or two. So certain fixes can happen. As I said, you have to flush that game and move on, It wasn't to be for the US.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Now back to the show.
So moving forward to tomorrow, Uruguay. This is a must-win, a must-draw to get out of the pool play. And also, it seems like a pretty evenly matched as if you compare the scores of today's matches between both teams, about 12 points each, similar score lines, except we have a draw with France. So this is obviously a must-do-well game. Am I correct?
Yes, you are 100%, because people were asking, what are the permutations? Very important. So the top two from each pool will go through. So the USA will finish, if they win, they'll finish third in their pool. And then also, because they tied the game, they had more points than anybody else if there's no other ties, and they'll go through as the 7th place seed. So Uruguay, though, very plucky team. They're very dangerous. They've beaten a lot of good sides in the series this year. They tend to stick very close to teams. They like the game when it's tighter. So if the US is able to get a bit of separation and a bit more depth on attack, I think a bit more depth, a bit more width to give their players a chance to handle the ball and free up those spaces. Hopefully things go well tomorrow and USA win. And again, you just need to win. It doesn't matter by how many points to advance in 7th. I see South Africa as the other side in one of the other pools is racking up points against Japan when they play them, and they will probably go through to the quarterfinals as well as the 8th seed. That's my kind of guess. Again, anything can happen, but I do favor the USA definitely in this one.
All right, let's speaking of Japan, USA women open up against get words out of my mouth eventually. USA women open up against Japan on Sunday, then Brazil, France on Monday. Let's talk about the USA women's prospects in the Olympics. I believe they probably have a better chance of medaling than the men's, in my opinion, as well. So let's talk about the women's program, the team in this.
Yeah, sure. I was going to give you the quarterfinal predictions for the men, but we'll come back to predictions maybe after we talk about the US women, okay?
Yeah, let's come back. We'll come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, the women's setup is very different. You've got New Zealand, Australia that are, generally the finalists in these tournaments. You've got a very good France team, a very good Canadian side. Ireland are excellent, and USA are right out there as well. So I think for the USA, I think they're going to top their pool. I think they're either going to they'll take out Japan and they'll take out France as well. And so I think they will be strong in their pool to go number one. I like the blend that the players have. There's some very good speed. There's some great experience. There's some hard tacklers, some good runners. Emily Bidwell and Zach Tess have done a great job with this program. I think they're peaking at the right time as well. So, yeah, for me, I see the USA winning every single one of their pool games.
Well, we hope so. I mean, that would...
Yeah.
That would certainly be amazing. And look, again, Bill brought it up earlier. It's crazy that, and I get it, that the men's sevens competition starts before the opening ceremonies. Like, it's wild that if you play Rugby 7 and you're a guy, and your competition could be over before the opening ceremonies yet. But anyway, so at least the women's competition will officially start after the opening ceremony. So for whomever is not watching the Olympics yet, they see the opening ceremony, they can be like, oh, okay, great, we can watch that. All right, questions coming in here soon. I mean, so the USA women, they did pretty well on the 7 series this year. I think the last 2, I don't know if they struggled necessarily or they were trying new combinations. That's all behind them, right? Like, yeah, they are certainly a top 4, top 3 side on the women's side. I guess talk to us about like how important would it be? Could there potentially be a nice lift if the women's team were to medal, say gold, silver, or bronze here? USA Today, the morning shows, like what are we thinking here? How much promotional behind it, little push could we get from this?
Yeah, well, firstly, I want to say it's so brilliant that we have people like Alona Mar in the team promoting rugby, promoting equality, promoting, all the great values that she's putting out there, as well as being just a funny human being and a wonderful rugby player. So she's already elevated by herself, and what she does and the following she has. She's really elevated our game. We have a lot of people on the street you speak to who don't know much about rugby. They're like, hey, I've seen this person, Alona Mar. Do you know her? And I'm like, yeah, I know her. She's part of, like, they don't know.
My bodyguard.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I don't go to the car park without her, So that's a great thing for the game, and having great endorsements and a lot of adverts and things that she's on. So that's really amazing. I think that is great for our sport. But we talk about a medal, and when I was playing, for the USA, we didn't have the allure of the Olympics. We had World Cup sevens and things like that. That was big for the sport. And a lot of people I would speak to since emigrating to the USA, they didn't know much about rugby. And when I asked them about the Olympic Games in 2016, they were like, well, I hear rugby's in the game, you want to watch it. And then, of course, afterwards, like, oh, we didn't win, talking about USA didn't win gold in both, right? And I was like, well, we are going to medal down the line. And I was hoping that would be the case in 2020. It wasn't. So you're right, Fitzy. It has to be this time. And the women do carry our hopes. I honestly think they will either get bronze or make a final and possibly get silver in that way. And so that would be tremendous for the sport, because one thing that really happens, as you all know, you've been in rugby a huge amount of time as well, is that if you have more publicity and you're able to get more broadcasting into the sport and show the game, we can't be behind a paywall. We really can't. The game needs to be free to air. It needs to be on huge networks. People need to know the sport, because we love the values. We love the camaraderie. We love everything it brings in the game. It mimics our society as well. It's all about the team. And yes, you've got individual stars, but rugby, as you know, as a team sport, is so exciting. It's global. It's international. I came from South Africa with a pair of rugby boots and made 30 friends at a rugby club and played, and I had a brilliant time. Eventually, one of them gave me an old car, one of them gave me a job. So it's a wonderful life through the sport of rugby, whether you play or whether you're a fan. So yes, I think a lot is riding on the team, but a medal would put our sport on the map here in North America. And good timing, right? With the Olympics coming here to LA in 28, the Women's World Cup and the Men's World Cup as well. I really hope we can do it.
All right, Dallen, let's talk about quarterfinals. Let's stick with the women. Who are your picks to make it to the quarterfinals?
Okay, so the women's quarterfinals, I have New Zealand against Fiji. I have Ireland against France. I have USA against Canada, and I have Australia against Great Britain. So that's basically allowing for the top two in each pool, and with Great Britain and Fiji finish in 7th and 8th positions. I then have a semi-final of New Zealand against France and USA against Australia. Now, this traditionally is where New Zealand win and go to the final, and this is where Australia win and go to the final. I am hoping that USA can surprise Australia like they have once earlier in the series and beat them in that game, knock them out, stun the world, and go to the final and get it. And I think New Zealand are very strong. I think they may take that final. So I see New Zealand gold, I see USA silver, and I see Australia bronze. That's a hot take.
I think you're right on there, and I picked Australia for bronze also. However, they have been really good this year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they medal a little higher. I think it's extremely good. However, I won't take anything less than a bronze from the USA side, and I'll be mad otherwise. All right, men's. Let's talk about the men's.
Okay, so the men's sides, I have here quarterfinals. Oh, well, first you just to say that USA will finish in 7th and South Africa in 8th to go through to the quarterfinals. And then that tees up New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, France, Fiji, Ireland, Argentina, USA. So that's a very tough draw for those teams. I have New Zealand beating South Africa, getting to the semi-final. France beating Australia, so it'll be New Zealand, France in the first semi-final. I have Fiji beating Ireland, and I do have Argentina beating the USA based on the performance this past 2 years for Argentina. And so that means that New Zealand, France, I'm going to go France. I'm going to go France surprising New Zealand and making a final, even though New Zealand are fantastic and more than likely could get through that. And then I have Fiji surprising Argentina to get through to the final. New Zealand taking bronze. And then France doing the gold against Fiji in dramatic fashion.
Ooh.
Well done. Fitzy, how do you feel about that? Is he accurate?
I mean, I would I love the pick because if you go back to just the Rugby World Cup, right? France hosted. It was France had everything lined up. A couple injuries right before. They were still primed to go kind of far. Couldn't get there on home soil. It would be a great story for the French team to be able to win gold. With Dupont orchestrating things. It's a great fairy tale. Will it happen?
Yes.
I guess. Once upon a time, we'll find out. But
yeah. And Fitzy, and this is the thing. It could be completely different. New Zealand probably could beat France, and then they play Fiji, let's say in the final, or even Argentina getting through. This is the crazy thing about sevens. I would be a millionaire if I could predict the winning of these tournaments. We all would be.
Well, give me out of that, give me like the dark horse that makes the run to the medals. Is it the U.S.?
So yeah, that's a good point. So let's go the men's side of things. Dark horse. Let's say you upset Argentina and they go through. They'll play Fiji again. It's very hard to get through that as well. And so I think on the men's side of things, probably no dark horses there for me. But on the women's side, yeah, there could be a dark horse coming through. It's not unusual for, let's say, if New Zealand were to slip up and France, this is the thing. You have a couple of yellow cards in the game, and dramatically that changes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden France go to the final. But I think there are no real dark horses because the top four are pretty solid. I would say in the quarters, if there's a big upset, I don't think the upset happens twice in a row. You know what I'm trying to say? And so they would get knocked out there in the semis.
Well, on the women's side,
who are your dark horses? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say on the women's side, you're projecting USA versus Canada quarterfinal. Did I hear this right?
Yes, quarterfinal. That's right. Yes.
That would be a very intense quarterfinal between because the two sides have played each other pretty well. It's gone back and forth. I think result-wise, obviously either side wants to win. We need some bragging rights here against our neighbors. So
yeah. Also, it's not nice though. You don't want USA and Canada knocking each other out, right?
Yeah.
Want the North American.
I'm okay with USA knocking out Canada.
Yeah, sure. But there was on the women's side and the men's side, Canada playing USA in the final of the series stop, which was cool. That was pretty remarkable. 20 years ago, you would never have thought those two teams would make the final of a main stop on a series. It was awesome,
So, Dallen, we're going to pivot to MLR here in a second. But first, when you watch the Olympic sevens, are you wearing those gloves you used to wear when you played? Or at least didn't you used to?
I did wear the gloves. You're right.
Yes.
I've got a pair back here somewhere with the playing jerseys,
They don't fit as well as they used to, but...
No, they don't. But listen, I will tell you this. My wife's actually the one doing the commentating. She's doing the commentating, and I'm just cracking up at her. She's making fun of, there's Rob Bickerman commentating, and so she's making fun of his aftershave, and a few lines. Yeah, exactly.
Nice. All right, one more thing about sevens, Dallen. You missed the beginning of the MLR season, which we're about to talk right now, because you were in Europe, plugging this a sevens program in Portugal. Can you talk about that briefly?
Yes, absolutely. So what I want to say is, my wife and I, I was at the Rugby World Cup in France, spent a month. It was amazing. My wife joined me for about a week in Nice, and we were just living the high life. And again, sport taking you all these amazing places. Very fortunate to get to work in rugby, and especially broadcasting. So she said, hey, if there's other opportunity to do rugby overseas, let me know. And out of nowhere, people in England called the Egg Chaser Sevens reached out to me and said, Dallen, next year, do you want to come and commentate in England? I said, sure. And then the people from the Algarve Sevens in Portugal reached out and did the same thing. So we built a month trip where we got to go to 5 different countries. And in between, I called some remote games for Super Rugby Americas. But then, ended up in Algarve. And so it's a wonderful tournament. I'm going back again next year. Beautiful beaches, great vibes. And by the way, any men's or women's teams, elite or social, from North America that want to go, come join me, message me. I'll hook you up. Discounted rate.
Well, you also need Fitzy and I to do maybe some color commentary. Fitzy color, I'll be on the sidelines.
I can hold a tag really well. Numbers, stats real easy. Yeah.
Bill, what are you doing with the sideline? Or are you just watching, or are you doing your sideline interviews? I mean, we're going to put you to work.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'll do some interviews. Yes. I have a drink in one hand. Hey, come here.
The lifestyle.
That was the Buffalo as well, by the way.
Yes. All right, let's move forward. Major League Rugby playoffs began last weekend. Round 1, Dallen, I'm going to let you choose which match you want to talk about first. New England over DC, Chicago over NOLA, Seattle over San Diego, and Dallas over Houston. I would choose Dallas over Houston, but who do you want to talk about first?
I honestly, that was the game of the year.
Yeah.
Dallas, Houston. Let's go there first.
Yeah. All right, Dallas, Houston. Dallas 6-10 regular season. No reason to beat Houston. How did this happen? I mean, when I say no reason, they're a good team. But record-wise, going into the season, Houston number 1, Dallas made the playoffs. How did that happen? What did Dallas do so well?
Okay, so a couple things at play here. And number one, let's talk about Houston first. What didn't they do? First of all, because normally they're a powerhouse side. They get you on the back foot the whole time. They're powerful forwards, great creative backs. They just keep coming at you. It's just relentless for 80 minutes. Well, for some reason, they ran out of gas early on, minute 50 or even earlier. They then forced things and just didn't look themselves. They didn't look like they had a plan, particularly in the second half.
Yeah.
That surprised me. That really surprised me. I chatted to a couple of people afterwards, and some people hinted saying maybe they went too hard in the week leading up to it. I'm not sure the full reason there, because they're at home as well, by the way, and that normally gives you a boost and gives you a lift. So that's on the Houston side. On the Dallas side, what they did well is they played, they're very risk adverse, so they're not scared to have a go. And they're running from their own line. They're kicking over the top. They're chasing. They're putting in 110% the whole time. I honestly, one of my favorite teams to watch this year, because they weren't afraid to throw the ball around. They don't have to play structured rugby to be a good team. And the English Premiership, when they had a champion, I think 2 years ago, similar style, just throwing the ball around, being creative, playing what's in front of you. And I think that's important. Sometimes when we play, particularly in 15s, we get a bit too structured. Oh, the rule is, 22, we must kick, or we must give it to the fly half. No, Dallas are like, don't worry about the rules. We'll run, and we'll do whatever we want, as long as we support ourselves. Gomez, Ora was outstanding for them. Honestly, such a good side to watch. I actually don't know I don't know what to say for the conference finals, because they are such a surprise package and such an entertainment machine.
Well, why don't we say in the Western Conference then? Seattle, San Diego. You talk about another team that tough place to play. Starfire Stadium certainly there. That was an intense physical match. I mean, bodies were hitting the floor, guys were going down. It was fun to watch. For San Diego here, I think they quietly had 11 wins. Everyone else was talking about Houston. They were talking about Seattle. You look at the San Diego Legion squad, I think they were a little longer in the tooth, maybe. And you've got a couple of players like, is this the last we're going to see of Ma'ananu or maybe Makido on a MLR field?
Yeah, so I did that game. I covered that game sideline, and I've done a lot of the I think about 4 or 5 of the San Diego games in Snapdragon Stadium. So with them, you're right. They do have a very experienced side. Let's put it that way. Some players I didn't expect to be able to still go, for the full time that they were on the field. So they surprised me though, particularly the last few weeks of MLR as they kept building. But what really was important to note on the side there was, instead of a 70-meter width of the field, it's 63 meters. Those 7 meters are, you think 7 meters, you don't think it's that much of a space. It really is, particularly when you're creating a bit of space for a wing to get through or somebody midfield. Seattle, obviously, at home, are so comfortable there. They had only lost 1 game this season at home. Their ability to get across the field and cover and make these hits and tackles, brutal hits. The player for me that stood out was Rhino Herbst for Seattle, who basically was flying into everything. One of his eyes was completely shut when I saw him after the game. The guy looked like Frankenstein out there. He took so many hits. But honestly, that game was amazing. Seattle, for me, very tough to beat in Seattle. And with San Diego, you're right. Afterwards, I felt for them. I saw Matt Ghetto. His family had flown. I think that might be his last go. Ma'ananu, no. I think he's going to go. He's going to be player coach, is my prediction for the future. Yeah. Player like Marcel Brackley may retire, and a handful of other players. I'm just guessing here. But I think some of those players, this was their last dance, as you said, Fitzy, and it didn't finish for them, unfortunately. They're a quality side, but you've got to feel for those players.
Now, did you see, before we get to the Eastern Conference, did you see maybe any impact from the international break? J.P. Smith was away with USA. As we get into, say, the New England Free Jacks, I mean, half their team is playing for Canada. Do you think that may have impacted either one of these sides?
Yeah, I think it does a little bit. I chatted to JP before. I congratulated him for getting his first cap and stuff like that. And he was obviously stoked to be in the US setup. He said, listen, they're a little bit banged up, but he said, that you put that aside, especially what they focused on was interesting, chatting to their coaching crew, Nessa Malifa and Clarkey and Chris Latham. They focused on the mindset and the mentality. And I think that's interesting because you don't have to, when you get to that level, you don't necessarily have to do, all the training and all the on-field stuff. A lot of it is, studying the opposition, figuring out things you're going to do yourself, being on the same page. So this is where Houston were not on the same page in their game. People were doing different things. But when you look at the Seattle game, they controlled those first 40 minutes. The fact that San Diego, with two players over 100 caps, couldn't score a try, it was unbelievable. So the fact they were so switch on focus, their mindset is what they have. And that's why they've done so well. And they're one of the most successful teams in the playoffs, and obviously have 2 titles to hand. So, I don't know if maybe some of the Houston players that play for the Eagles were more tired than the others. I'm not sure on all that. But once you get to that level, you really do have to kind of switch on and your mind has to take over,
Moving to the Eastern Conference, let's go with Chicago and NOLA. I'm not surprised by this final because Chicago has been on a roll. The last 3 matches, including this past weekend, nearly 40 points in each match, over 40 in this past weekend's match, and then also beating San Diego, 4 matches ago. Since that coaching break, it's a different team. Talk about this match against NOLA, and also should the rest of the league be scared about the way Chicago's rolling?
Yeah, you bring up a great point. So you don't often see coaching changes in the middle of the season, right? Or near the end of the season, as you will. I don't know the background story there, and I won't speculate on that. But it is interesting, the freedom the players seem to have now to be able to go after it. And again, there's been hard work put in by Sam Harris before, obviously. So he's built the side, But it's just lovely to see. It really is. And it's important for, the fans and the franchise and stuff like that. I didn't expect them to put on such a display. I really thought NOLA was going to come through. Just reading some of the stuff beforehand, chatting with some of the players here and there, NOLA were on the rise, and the fact that, Chicago came through and just, as you said, the last 3 or 4 games, storming teams. I'm very interested to see how, obviously, the next game does go for them, but very happy for their franchise and obviously everybody involved there.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Now back to the show. Bill chose this game last because Bill
so the best for last.
New England. I cheer for DC. It's kind of like Star Wars. Like Bill cheers for
Dallen was a New England guy also at one point.
I'm a Jedi Knight. Cheer for DC. So the Evil Empire may have won this one, but in the end, if you follow the Star Wars trilogy, the good guys always win eventually. So enough about that. Let's talk about that game. And that was an intense physical game. Obviously, the history between the two sides of this season, both winners in the regular season by 1 point. I think a lot of people anticipated it was going to be pretty close, and it was. New England just enough to get past the scrappy Old Glory DC side. Bill was at the game. I don't know where I'm going with this, other than I'm still bitter about this. Bill, you might have to take over.
You don't want to talk about it, do you? Should we just move on to the next round? I'll jump in. You okay? You want me to jump in, or you have this?
I've got it. I've got a question.
Right.
I've got a question in there somewhere. New England. I think the other teams in the Eastern Conference have narrowed the gap with New England. Right. I think last year New England kind of just stormed and just rolled everyone in the Eastern Conference. I think it's better that the Eastern Conference has been competitive this year. We saw Miami get wins. It was great. Anthem certainly love what they're doing there, but everyone else who made the playoffs, they were able to beat New England. New England had a couple losses at home in the regular season. So it was good that it was more competitive, but it just seems like this New England side just doesn't panic and is just built to weather some of these blows from Old Glory and still be able to just get the job done when they need to. For someone who cheers, I like New England. I like what they're doing here. For someone who cheers against New England, it's hard to watch them play because they just
Do you have a question here, Fitzy? Come on, get to the question.
No, I'm just ranting. Yeah, just mute my mic, Bill. Just mute my mic. I'm coming back, guys.
All right, I'm jumping in here. Go ahead, Dallen.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I know what you're saying. Like again, I'm a fan of New England, having lived there. My wife's from Massachusetts, and Bill knows I spent a lot of time there. But you're right. I think for them, Scott Matthew and the coaching crew there. I've seen them in action. So the one team I really know well because I've gone to their training sessions. I've gone to how they conduct themselves in the building, the offices and stuff like that. They keep it fun. They keep it exciting. They're just a great group, it seems, and so I'm pleased that they're awarded in these tough games because DC brought it to them. DC came out flying. I was so impressed with their creative ability. Connor Buckley was fantastic. They were very good. And in fact, just watching as an impartial bystander, I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting how this one closes. And you're right. You've got some obviously standout talents. Wayne Butterbank, again, is a player you have to mention. Reece Lightning, again, brilliant. The forwards, awesome. Even though a lot of different players, right, that compared to last year as well. Some of the big hitters out injured who you normally would see in the team. So I think that New England side, what they do really well is whoever they have, whatever resources they have, they're able to put together still a splendid result, and they can withhold and withstand, as you said, a lot. And it showed obviously last year's final, and it's showing now. So, Bill and I are probably biased, but yeah, we knew there was something.
Oh, and we see it more in person. I spoke to Paul Shee after the one of the owners of DC, right? Owner, I believe. He commented on the crowd. And Dallen, maybe you could talk about this really quick before we get into the conference finals. I've talked about this with Dina Waldron a couple of years ago when he was at New Orleans, and they were coming back early in the second half, and then the crowd at Quincy, Veterans Memorial Stadium, got loud and got into it. And he said it really took them out of the game. And Paul mentioned that also. He says it felt like when the crowd got into it, it really sucked some of the energy out of the Old Glory side. So with that said, Dallen, looking at New England, Chicago, Seattle, Dallas, going into the conference finals, home field advantage, who has the advantage because of the crowd?
Yeah, so that's a great point. So when I was doing research on let's talk about the Seattle game, right? Seattle, San Diego, 12, so they played each other 16 times in history since 2018. 12 of the 16 games were decided by the home team winning. So as a home field advantage, 12 out of 16. That's a very high percentage. And then again, Seattle beat them at home. So now that's 13 out of 17. So New England as well had the same thing. Now, what the home crowd does is people think, oh, is it a big advantage? Is it not? Number one, it's important when you're playing the game to be in a familiar environment. So number one, you have to fly somewhere. You have to stay at a new hotel. You don't know the landscape very well. You're at a different field. You don't play there a lot. You play there twice in a season. So that's a big thing. When the crowd gets behind the home side, the opposition, who might not be thinking about it, they have for a second, they have their mind think of that, so they're less focused on the game. And all of a sudden, they do something, that doesn't work out, and people start cheering for the opposition. So it actually is a big deal. And so with all those little elements at play, that's why you guys call it Fort Quincy. It really is that. It's very tough to play there. It's very tough to play at Seattle. So for any team to get a win, it would take a remarkable encounter, which is probably why I'm probably going to back the two home side in their home grounds. With Dallas, anything can happen, but I still, if I had that $1 million that I won in the sevens, because I was very good at betting, I'd put it on New England and Seattle.
All right, real quick, and Fitzy, I'm going to have you jump in a second. I brought two good friends from Dublin to the match this past weekend, and they've never been to an MLR match yet. I've been to games. I've been to All Blacks Ireland match in Chicago with them. I've been to Barbarians Ireland and Ireland with them. They both said, and the coach of the All Blacks said, they're really impressed with the festival atmosphere and the tailgating involved with these matches. Very American, I believe they were saying, and at least my two friends were blown away. My friend Peter had this amazing bugle sound the entire. Oh, there he is. Down, where'd you go?
Sorry.
All right.
You were taking too long. You were taking too long.
Yeah, it's like I'm done. Anyway, let's move on. Fitzy, let's talk about the conference finals. You lead this.
No, Bill, finish your thought.
No, just briefly. The American entertainment engine of sports, the All Blacks coach noted how amazing the tailgating and everything else is around the match. And you've been around the world, Dallen, to see these games. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. So having obviously going to Snapdragon Stadium, going to Fort Quincy, going to Seattle, and all around, I love the fact that there's so many things on the go. You can bring your young kids. You've got games on the go. They're playing in youth mini events and things like that. There's obviously the beer garden. There's tons of merch for sale, which is important. People love that as well. It is awesome. Every stadium you go to in MLR, there's something on the go, which I love. Other countries, host even Rugby World Cup events. There's not much else happening outside of the main game itself. So from that point of view, I can see, because we have the space as well. We've got the space and the setup is really nice. So I think that's encouraging going towards the Rugby World Cups as well. It's a big deal to have more than just a game. And I know, speaking to Alex Magleby back in the day when I was with New England, that's the thing. They said, listen, we don't just want to have the avid rugby fan day. We want to have families come and be like, hey, we like this whole day, because we have something for everybody. And I think, I love that MLR is doing that, ticking all those boxes. Brilliant to see.
So, Dallen, sorry, Bill, you mentioned Rugby World Cup real quick. Certainly I think World Rugby is making an effort to get some more big games here in the U.S. Certainly Scotland, USA, great crowd there in D.C. at Audi Field, 17,000, and stadium that holds 20. But the All Blacks, right, they played Fiji at Snapdragon Stadium last weekend, 33,000 fans in attendance. That's got to be reassuring for World Rugby officials to see that, crowds will come out for a big match like that. And that's just one match. But yeah, give me your takeaways, Dallen, when from that match in terms of just the interest that it drew and the number of people that showed up to watch it.
Yeah, I think it's so great. Having New Zealand obviously here, they generally sell out, right? Which is awesome. My wife's very first rugby game, a 15-a-side game she saw live, was New Zealand Ireland in Chicago. 63,000 people, with Ireland beating them for the first time in 108 years, I think it was.
Amazing match, yeah.
Amazing match. And I believe they're coming back next year. I don't know if it's true or not, but I saw some rumors that they're coming back. So you're right. Having 33,000 Snapdragon, number one, Snapdragon Stadium, what a bit. We're so excited for the MLR final. I don't know. Are you guys going to be able to come in for that game? What do you
can't make it this year?
Okay. I'll have to do the sideline and the drinking for you, Bill, and Fitzy. I'll have to goose step for you. So yeah, the venue's amazing. It's really, there's not a bad seat in the house. It's so great. And so the fact that there are 33,000, I think it's vitally important, because the Sevens series, unfortunately, Los Angeles have been very disappointing. Even the LA side as well, in MLR, disappointing. That area is not great, I don't think, for rugby. I think the Sevens needs to go somewhere else. But San Diego have done a very good job with their MLR side over the years. And so that is really nice. Because remember when they played in the Torero Stadium, the smaller, they still brought a nice crowd, but it wasn't the best venue. So the fact that they're in that stadium now is good. And I think ahead of World Cup, look, I can't wait to see which cities get games and which stadiums get games. We know the time of year may change. People were talking online about MLR will be hosting some of the games. I'm not so sure. I think the Rugby World Cup needs to go to slightly bigger stadiums. Snapdragon's that size, and bigger. Yeah.
All right, let's jump into the conference finals. We don't really need to talk about the individual teams. Let's just talk about results. Who do you think wins the Eastern Conference finals? And then we'll go into Western Conference. I do think there is a possibility of a Chicago-Dallas finals in San Diego.
Well, I this is the great thing. This is what I love about rugby. You could go either way. It can be New England, Seattle, or it could be the other way, as you just said. I'm gonna go for New England and Seattle. But hoping Dallas could get through and Chicago can get through. That would be great to have those two teams in the final. I think it's a great advert for the game, great advert for the way the formula was working out for the knockout rounds too. Because you want more teams playing in knockout rugby. I think keep the franchises more engaged, the fans more engaged, because you never know what's going to happen. Look at Dallas. Their seed, fourth seed, and all of a sudden they could be in the final. Let's see, what do you say?
Yeah.
I think the Evil Empire, the Free Jacks, get past Chicago Hounds, but I think it'll be a fight. I think the smaller dimension Starfire Stadium limits Dallas's ability to be able to throw the ball around, and I think Seattle pushes through to represent the Western Conference.
Yeah.
All right, well said, man. Lots of words in that one.
He was very happy about that too. He was delighted.
He was.
When he was doing those predictions.
Straight to it, Fitzy. I love it. Yeah, actually, I'd love to see a New England Seattle matchup. Mainly because I've been to a match in Seattle. I saw Free Jacks play there right the week before COVID shut things down. Great atmosphere there, I think very similar to what New England does. They do similar things. So I'd love to see those two face each other in San Diego. I'd prefer to see them play actually. I'd love to see San Diego play in New England one day. So we'll see how that happens next couple of years. So Dallen, let's wrap things up with you. Let's talk about, you have a program in the works right now. I believe it's called Flag X or Tag X. We've seen the rise of flag football at the youth level. Is this similar? And what's the aim here?
Yeah, it is similar. And you know that flag football is going to be the Olympic Games in LA in 2028. So that's an interesting play. But NFL, of course, I'm a big believer in non-contact sports to advance your sport and your game as well, to keep more people engaged. It's not to detract from the tackle game at all. It's to add to that. And so Perry Baker and myself are working here in California, but spreading the game globally because we feel that if more people can pick up a rugby ball and play it in a safe way, the better. So at the same time, Flag X is basically, it has different scoring boxes, so different values for where you score. So more strategy. There's kicking in the game, so it's a bit of jeopardy as well, because if you kick the ball out, you attack 7v5, you will go 7v6 in the normal game. But if you kick the ball out, your attacking team drop down to 5 players, and the defending team get their player back, so it's 7v5.
Wow.
So there's a few little extra things that play. It's quite an exciting game. There are conversions to go as well, which are rubber kicks. So it teaches some skills in the game as well, which is pretty cool. And so the goal for this is to basically grow the game, but also to provide this as a vehicle for rugby clubs to fundraise. Because I believe, particularly here in the US, fundraising is a big portion that is missed. And even today, I got a message from Belmont Short, my old team, saying, could you help fund us to go internationals? I would love not to get those emails, and I'd love for them to put on a Flag X tournament, raise money from the community coming to pay to play. I will pay and play an event like that, and all of a sudden they go to nationals based on that. The great thing about the game also is it can up your skill sets to the current players and bring new people into the environment. So think about a college campus like USC, I said the other day. If you throw, ultimate frisbee is massive on campus. If you have non-contact rugby, people are more likely to try it out, and you can have co-ed as well. So the guys and girls play together safely. So I think this game is the future, and it just adds on to what teams are currently doing. So obviously people can message myself or Perry Baker to get involved, and we'll send them an equipment bag for free, get it started tomorrow.
Quickly, Fitzy, message him. Let's get some equipment bags.
and some tsunami gear as well. That's my other.
Yeah, I love that shirt.
Thing I have.
Yeah, that's a great shirt.
Yeah.
That's a great shirt. When we travel with you over to Europe next year, we should get matching shirts.
That's right. When we go to the Algarve Sevens, right? There we go.
Yes, exactly. Fitzy, anything else for Dallen?
That's it, Dallen. I appreciate the time. Next time I'm out there, we got to play. I got to join your touch squad that plays on the beach.
Me too.
One time, that was fun.
It was great. I mean, I was so impressed with a couple of your goose steps and no-look passes. It's really, even though the ball hit the ground, it was okay. Play on.
And lastly, Dallen, where can we find you this weekend?
Yes, I'll be in Seattle this weekend, heading up. By the way, I almost missed the game last weekend. So I was doing sideline, and because of the world outage, the airlines had still issues. Yeah, so I had to drive to East LA to an airport called Ontario, California, and just play the game in time there. Yeah, been okay. So, but yeah, I'll be there, Seattle, Dallas. So excited for that Western Conference final. Then I'll be at the final in San Diego the following weekend. So 2 riveting weekends to come.
I'm just happy you're on location for these matches. I know it's difficult to do it in a studio, so I'm really happy you're going to be on location. All right, Dallen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great hour here talking to you about this. You're a wealth of knowledge that we love listening to and talking to you about. Thank you so much. Have a great time this weekend. Have a great time in San Diego, and don't drink too much.
Thank you very much, you 2 stars. Appreciate what you do for the game. Seriously, you do wonderful work, Bill. Fitzy, you're not so bad yourself either. And so look forward to getting together, sharing a couple of jars at the Algarve. Take care, you stars.
All right, man. Cheers.
You done?
Yes. You too, Fitzy. You too.
Yeah. And that other guy.
Yes, as like I said to Dallen, as you agree also, Fitzy, he's a lot of fun to talk to. I love his input on the game. He obviously knows a lot more than we do, so it's great to have someone like him on. And cheers to Dallen.
Here's to Dallen.
Sorry, I should have done that later. Anyway, Fitzy, great time talking. Let's all watch some more rugby tomorrow. Lots more on TV on Peacock. USA faces Uruguay, I believe, at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Is that accurate? East Coast time, I think it is. I want to say. Sure, why not? So 9:30, 9 o'clock, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Uruguay on Peacock, and then the women's team start playing on Sunday. But prior to that, we've got New England Free Jacks versus Chicago at 1 o'clock on Saturday, and that's on FS1. And then on Sunday will be the other matchup, Seattle and Dallas. I believe it's on 4 o'clock Eastern Time when they play on FS1 too. So it's great to see them on FS1. Listeners, give us a follow if you don't mind, please. If we want to beg, we will definitely beg. And actually, listeners, if you follow us and you text Dallen, he will send you a kit. A Flag X kit. And you tell him we said so. I don't know where I'm going with this. Anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in. Stand by for guest announcement coming up early next week for next Wednesday's show. We definitely be talking more MLR, Olympic rugby, and more. And possibly some Rugby Foundation news as well, because a man involved in this whole thing just retired recently. So we need to get involved with him as well and see if we can get him on the show. I believe I saw him in France at some point, so he may not be available. But we will try that as well. Fitzy, have a great night. Great talking.
Cheers.
Good work, man. Cheers.
Sports Social Podcast Network.